My name is Brianna, and from wherever you're watching this, I need you to stay with me because have you ever been standing in a room full of people celebrating you and realized that the one person whose voice you most wanted to hear was the same one who just said the cruelest thing you'd ever heard in your life? That's what happened to me at my own wedding reception. The flowers were white ranunculus. I remember that because I'd spent 3 weeks arguing with the florist about whether ranunculus or garden roses would hold up better in July heat. 3 weeks on flowers. And my mother chose my wedding day to tell me, in front of 47 people, that my brother deserved the house I bought more than I did. Let me back up. I'm the oldest of 2. My brother is 4 years younger than me, and from the time he was about 9 years old, my parents treated him like he was made of something fragile and precious that the rest of us needed to protect. He wasn't sick. He wasn't disadvantaged in any obvious way. He just had this quality, this easy charm, this ability to walk into a room and make my father laugh within 30 seconds, and somewhere along the way, my parents decided that quality was worth more than anything I could ever produce. I was the one who studied. I was the one who worked part-time through high school, who didn't go to parties because I was applying for scholarships, who got into a nursing program on a full ride while my brother coasted through community college on my parents' dime, and then dropped out after a year and a half. When he dropped out, my mother called me crying, saying she didn't know how she'd manage, that my brother was going through something, that the family needed to pull together. I was 22 and working night shifts at a hospital in Columbus. I pulled together. For almost 4 years, I paid my parents' mortgage, not helped, not contributed occasionally, paid it every month. $1,500 that came directly out of my checking account on the first. I told myself it was temporary. My brother would find his footing. My dad's contracting business would stabilize, things would even out. They didn't even out. What happened instead was that my brother eventually got a job managing inventory at a hardware store. Fine, good. I was genuinely glad for him, and my parents bought a second car and started taking weekend trips to Gatlinburg and stopped mentioning the mortgage, but never actually told me to stop paying it either, so I kept paying it. Because every time I thought about bringing it up, my mother would say something like, "You know your brother is still finding his footing," and I would feel guilty for even considering stopping. Then I met my husband. We dated for 2 years, got engaged, and started planning our future together. We found a house we loved, a 3-bedroom in a quiet neighborhood outside Nashville. Good school district even though we didn't have kids yet, a yard with 2 oak trees that I couldn't stop thinking about. We made an offer. We got it. I told my parents about the house in a video call on a Sunday afternoon. My father nodded and said, "Good for you." My brother, who was apparently at my parents' house when I called, leaned into the frame and said, "Must be nice." My mother smiled the way she smiles when she's not really listening and asked if I'd thought about how far the commute would be. That was it. No congratulations. No questions about the house. No excitement. We moved in 6 weeks later and I gave my parents our new address. My mother texted back a single thumbs up emoji. I cried in the bathroom for about 20 minutes and then went to help my husband hang shelves. Now, the wedding. We'd planned it for 14 months. Small ceremony, bigger reception, outdoor venue just outside Nashville with string lights and round tables and a caterer who did the most incredible smoked brisket I've ever tasted. My husband's family drove in from Michigan. My parents drove 4 hours from Ohio. My brother came with his girlfriend of 3 months, a woman I'd met exactly once before that day. The ceremony was perfect. Genuinely, quietly perfect. My husband cried when he saw me walking down the aisle, and that almost made me cry, and then I held it together because I'd paid a lot of money to have my makeup done and I was going to honor that investment. We said our vows. The officiant was funny and warm. My best friend gave a toast that made the whole room laugh and then tear up. Everything felt right. And then my mother stood up. She hadn't been scheduled to give a toast. There wasn't a program slot for her. But she stood up during the reception, while people still had food on their plates, picked up a glass, and waited until the room noticed her. My husband squeezed my hand under the table. I think he already felt something coming. "I just want to say," my mother began, "how proud I am. This is a beautiful day, and it makes me think about this family and everything we've worked for together." I remember thinking, okay, this is fine. She's going to say something about family. She does this at holidays, the general speech about togetherness. Your brother, she said, looking directly at me, has been working so hard lately. He and his girlfriend are looking at apartments. It's not easy out there. And I just think, Brianna, with that big house of yours and 2 incomes now, there are people in this family who need support, who deserve a chance. The room went very quiet. I want to be clear about what she was saying because some people who've heard this story weren't sure they understood it. My mother was suggesting, at my wedding reception, with a glass of champagne in her hand, that I should give my brother money toward housing, that my newly purchased home and my new marriage represented resources that the family was entitled to redistribute toward my brother. That was the toast. My father nodded slowly from his seat. My brother looked down at his plate. My husband's hand tightened on mine. I sat there for what felt like a long time but was probably 4 seconds, and something happened inside me that I don't know how to describe exactly. It wasn't anger, though anger was in there. It was more like clarity. Like someone had turned up all the lights in a room I'd been trying to navigate in the dark for years. I stood up. I picked up my glass. I smiled. Genuinely, I think, because I wasn't performing anything right then. I was just finally seeing things clearly. Thank you, I said, for bringing up family support. Since we're on that topic. My best friend later told me she saw what was coming and gripped the edge of the table. For the last 4 years, I said, still holding the glass, still smiling, I've been paying Mom and Dad's mortgage, $1,500 a month. That's around $72,000. I paused. I've never asked for it back. I never wanted to. I did it because I love this family and I wanted to help. The room was so quiet I could hear the string lights buzzing. But if we're talking about who deserves support, I said, and who's been showing up for this family, I'd love for someone to do that math. I sat down. My mother's face had gone the color of old chalk. My father wasn't nodding anymore. My brother's girlfriend was looking at him with an expression I recognized. It was the same expression I'd had for years, that slowly dawning look of, wait, what is actually happening in this family? My husband leaned over and said, very quietly into my ear, I'm so proud of you. The toast, if you could call it that, did not continue. The caterer appeared with a fresh tray of something and the room sort of exhaled and started talking again, the way rooms do when they've collectively decided to pretend a moment didn't happen. My best friend caught my eye from across the table and mouthed something that I choose to interpret as words of support. My parents did not come to say goodbye when they left. My brother did wave, stiffly, from across the parking lot. The drive home that night, my husband and I didn't talk about it much. We talked about the brisket. We talked about how his aunt had danced so enthusiastically she'd lost a shoe. We talked about the oak trees in our yard and how we wanted to put a bench under one of them. It was the right conversation to have. I didn't want to spend my wedding night untangling my family. I wanted to just be in my marriage for one night. But the next week, it started. My mother called on Tuesday. I let it go to voicemail. The message was about 20 seconds long and consisted of her saying she felt misunderstood and that she hoped I wasn't going to make this into a thing. I listened to it twice and then set my phone face down on the counter and made dinner. My brother texted Thursday. He said, you didn't have to do that in front of everyone. I read it, set the phone down, picked it up again, and typed, you're right. Mom didn't have to say what she said in front of everyone either. I sent it and then turned my phone off for the rest of the evening. My father called Saturday and actually got through because I mistook the number from my husband's work line. He said, and I want to be careful to be fair here because what he said was more layered than my mother's voicemail. He said he understood why I was upset. He said he thought my mother didn't phrase things well. He said he'd been telling her for years that she was harder on me than on my brother and that he was sorry he hadn't said it louder or sooner. That one I wasn't ready for. I stood in my kitchen holding the phone and didn't say anything for a moment. Dad, I said finally, do you know that I've been paying your mortgage for 4 years? I know, he said. Did you think about it? When she stood up at my wedding and said what she said, did you think about it? There was a long pause. I thought about it, he said. I should have said something. I didn't. I told him I needed some time. He said he understood. We hung up. Here's the thing I want to say about that conversation and about what happened next, Because I think this is the part people misunderstand about stories like mine. I wasn't trying to punish anyone. I wasn't keeping score to win. I had genuinely given that money to my family because I loved them and I could and I wanted to. The problem wasn't the money. The problem was the story my family had been telling, the one where I was the reliable one, the responsible one, the one who could handle anything and didn't need anything, and my brother was the one who needed to be cushioned and protected and handed things. I'd been paying into a story that erased me, so I did something I'd been thinking about since that Saturday call with my father. I sat down at my desk. We have a little office nook off the kitchen with a window that looks out at one of the oak trees, and I opened my laptop and I printed 4 years of bank statements. I highlighted every mortgage payment. I also printed the original loan documents my parents had given me when I first started paying, the ones I'd kept in a folder in my filing cabinet because I'd had some instinct, some quiet, pragmatic part of me that said, keep these. I put everything in a manila envelope. Statements, loan documents, a single handwritten note that said, this is what I gave because I loved you. I still do. But I will not be invisible anymore. No return address. I mailed it on a Wednesday morning on my way to work. 3 weeks went by. My mother didn't call. My brother didn't text. I went to work, came home, had dinner with my husband, watched things on TV, went to the farmer's market on Saturday mornings, started planning what to plant under the oak tree. I wasn't happy exactly, but I wasn't the particular kind of sad I'd been carrying for years either. I felt lighter, which surprised me because I'd thought the confrontation would make me feel worse. Then my father called again. He'd gotten the envelope. He'd looked through everything. He said he'd sat at the kitchen table with the bank statements for a long time. He told me he'd shown them to my mother, that he'd made her look at each one. He said she'd cried. What did she say? I asked. She said she didn't realize how much it was. I didn't respond to that right away because I was trying to figure out how I felt about it. Part of me wanted to say, how could she not know? She knew the number every month. But I also know my mother, and I know the specific way she has of knowing something and also not knowing it, of holding information at a distance so it doesn't touch her too directly. I don't need her to be sorry about the money, I said finally. I need her to understand that the way she sees me and the way she sees my brother, it's not fair, and it's been hurting me for a long time. The wedding was just the first time I said it out loud. My father was quiet. I know, he said. I want to have a relationship with you both, I said. I want to have holidays and phone calls and be a family, but I can't do it on the old terms. I won't be the one everyone leans on while my brother gets everything handed to him. That's fair, my father said. That's more than fair. He asked if they could come visit. Not to fight, not to relitigate anything, just to see our house, to see the yard, to try to start over on different ground. I told him I'd think about it and talk to my husband. My husband, for the record, had one question. Do you want them here? And I realized the answer was yes. Not because I'd forgiven everything, or because I'd forgotten the years of being made to feel like the household infrastructure rather than a daughter, but because I wanted a family and I was willing to build one, a real one, with clearer rules on more honest ground. They came on a Sunday in October. The weather was cool and the oak trees had started turning and the yard looked exactly like I'd imagined it when we first saw the house. My mother stood in the backyard for a while and said, "It's beautiful here." That was all. No qualifier, no pivot to my brother, no unsolicited opinion about what I should do with the space. Just, "It's beautiful here." We had lunch. It wasn't comfortable exactly, but it was real, more real than a lot of lunches I'd had with my family over the years. My mother apologized eventually, halting and imperfect and not quite saying the precise thing I would have scripted for her, but meaning it. I could tell she meant it. My father kept refilling everyone's water glasses, which is what he does when he's anxious and trying to be helpful. After they left, I stood at the kitchen window and watched their car back out of the driveway. My husband came and stood next to me. "How do you feel?" he asked. "Like I finally said the thing I've been carrying for 10 years, I said. "And like now, I have to figure out who I am when I'm not carrying it." He put his arm around me. Outside, one of the oak leaves dropped and floated down slowly to the yard. That's the thing no one tells you about finally standing up for yourself in a family like mine. You expect it to feel like an ending. What it actually feels like is a beginning. Confusing, open, a little scary. You've spent so long being the strong one, the silent one, the one who handles it, That when you stop doing that, you have to learn what you are instead. I'm still learning. Some days I think I have it figured out. Some days I get a text from my brother that's perfectly normal, about a football game or a mutual cousin's birthday, and I feel that old reflex kick in, the urge to smooth things over, to be accommodating, to make it easy for him. I don't always resist that reflex perfectly, but I'm better at noticing it, and noticing it is, I think, most of the work. The mortgage payments stopped the month after the wedding. My parents haven't asked about them. My brother is still in an apartment, still working at the hardware store, and from what my father tells me, doing fine. He doesn't need my money. He never did. He needed my parents to stop expecting me to provide what they should have held him to earning himself. The ranunculus, by the way, held up beautifully in the July heat. I was right about that, and I'm learning, slowly, imperfectly, but genuinely, to be right about myself too.